are you all doing? It's after lunch. Well, we got a fantastic panel coming up shortly to wake you all up. And you guys heard today's keynote, yesterday's keynotes, a lot of good stuff about AI and ML. And we are going to show you how AI and ML can be applied across the value chain. And this is the theme, bridge from marketing to supply chain. I am Sallil Amonkar. I am the CEO of Pluto 7. More importantly, I also lead the AI and ML professional services team. And I have the good fortune of having some of my customers sitting along with me who will join me shortly on this panel. So without further ado, being in the business for such a long time, and I've worked as both an employee of a large corporation and a management consultant, and now I'm working as helping companies come up and drive breakthrough innovation using the latest technologies. The key thing that has stood out for me is that typically a lot of enterprises end up in having focus on the front, what I call as the front end of the enterprise value chain. I define that more as marketing, the front end of the whole business, the customer-facing side of a business in the value chain, marketing, sales. And then you have the operations and the supply chain, which for our reference, I'll define as the back end. Typically, there's been a lot of focus on how do you make the profitability of the enterprise or the customer experience that an enterprise can provide its customers seamless. And we've seen time and time again that this has pretty much been a challenge, even though there have been advances in technology. Just to illustrate that, I thought this was a very apt quote from Mark Anderson. Pretty much, he captured this very well, saying that, well, there were a lot of technical breakthrough technology possibilities. Really, the business, there was a challenge in how business could achieve the results despite those technological innovations, and that it was not only the fact that it was the business who was willing to drive, but there were technology challenges that still stopped the business from attaining those goals. So that falls very perfectly with my opening statement, which is essentially the key to all this. Driving the business benefit starts by making sure that you are able to take the process. The process is basically people, process, and technology, and have it work seamlessly from the front to the back. It starts with the customer and ends with the customer. But for you guys as enterprises, there's always the front end of the demand generation, the marketing side of the processes, and then you have your fulfillment processes, which are mostly operational, that deals with supply chain. So the key thing is AI and ML proposes some possibilities to have a responsive back end that can go hand in hand with the front end. And today's themes, as you will see in the in the panel discussion, is to give you some ideas on how we can see that happening, or in fact, what are the challenges that still exist that need to be overcome in order to make it even better. And how does AI and ML fall into the strategic aspect as well as the tactical aspect of enabling this? So a lot of companies have already started using AI on the marketing side, on the to some extent, even on the customer relationship management and sales. AI has been seen to have given very good results in this area. The key is whether we can follow that up and leverage AI and ML also on the operations and supply chain, and that piece is still evolving. So just to encapsulate this, pretty much some of the key things here are you can come up with a very good, efficient, and targeted marketing, leading to competitive advantage that can be achieved through AI and ML. It has been achieved through traditional analytics to some extent, and you'll see my panelists talk about it. And then the key here is, on the operations side, is doing exception-based demand planning. time and time again, when I have provided solutions to large customers or even small customers, even though they have been good solutions, and some of you are aware of that, them like SAP, Oracle, value chain planning, SAP's advanced supply chain planning, every time we've implemented, the customer has still come back and asked, why can't I do exception-based planning? Meaning, I need to only know where the demand, where do I have to pay attention to my demand, and where do I have to pay attention to my supply? So these are typical outcomes that where people have started using AI and ML, we have seen. And again, we'll go as the panelists talk about it. Hopefully, this comes out. It really helps, for example, in coming up with the 360 view of the customer. And that leads to increasing, for example, your marketing campaign efficiencies and helps drive revenue on the front end. On the back end, it really helps if you do this right by coming up with a good customer experience, especially in retail, where retail has to be very responsive, especially with omnichannel, et cetera. And it allows you to do this while maintaining productivity and profitability. And to really come to this piece where you can have the true benefits, you have to see some sort of implementation across the enterprise. That's the goal. So how can ML drive your transformation of your business? These are the three key elements in that whole value chain. And then there's the marketing ML, there's a demand ML, and there's a supply ML. I'm just simplifying this. You heard it yesterday and today, a lot of AI and ML making things simpler. So to keep it simple and easy, those are the branding that we have come up with, and we'll expand into this in the panel. So without further ado, I would like to invite my panelists up here to join me. And we have a great set of panelists today. They are our customers. And we will talk with them on each of their experiences that deal with the front end and the back end of the process. What are their thoughts? What do they see as strategic elements, the tactical elements, and their experiences in trying to leverage AI and ML in accomplishing what I just said. So before we start the panel discussion, I would like each one of you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Vikram. I work as a senior manager for AI ML group in Cisco.
I'm Sudhakar. I run the enterprise applications at Synaptics. Just a brief overview of the company. We make anything that you interact with an electronic device solutions behind those interactions, like be it be touch or be it be fingerprint solution, or you might be ordering pizza or something on your Alexa device. So we make solutions for voice, fingerprint, and touch, so it will be easy for you to get that context when I speak about how we have utilized ML.
Hi, I'm Adam Spunberg. I lead the global tech exploration part in supply for AB InBev. So that's Anheuser-Busch, for those of you who don't know. So beer production on a global level across all the continents.
Hi, I'm Deepak Mehrotra, Chief Adventurer at California Design Den. We make something very simple. Google wants you to be on cloud. We want you to sleep on cloud. We make bedding products. And from a typical design, manufacturing, white label goods for retailers in North America, a couple of years back, we turned to the B2C side and now are like a retailer. So we'll talk more.
Thank you. So I don't know how many of you attended Adam's presentation yesterday. He went into more detail on some of the things around what they have done, preventive maintenance. He'll mention some of it again here today. But that was an excellent presentation. You can go back and review it. As you know, those are still available to be reviewed later on. Thank you, Adam. So let's start. Vikram, with you, and you may want to keep the mic closer to.
Sure.
So we talked about AI and ML, and I presented the front end and the back end of the processes, and then we talked about lost opportunity, right? And there's Mark Anderson's quote, which sort of talks a little bit about the same thing. What's your perspective?
At the very high level, I agree with this quote, but at the same time, technology is the enabler of the vision that we have to put in the front. If we don't have the vision, then technology is not going to help us in the long run. There are a lot of examples like Google, Amazon, all these companies where technology was not there when they started it. So if the vision was not there and if the willingness of taking that vision to reality was not there, technology would not help us. Now, there are a lot of use cases also where technology came in, and as a human being, when we learn somebody else doing something, we try to see how we can take benefit of the same concept and evolve to the next level. So there are a lot of examples in that as well. So it is a philosophical debate, but it depends on how you want to take it. I think ideas and a willingness to take those ideas to execution is more important than technology.
Very good. Sudhakar, you want to add anything to
I
that?
agree. So the problem of the demand-supply matching and time to market were always there. So we had to look into solutions that could help us to bridge the gap as to optimize our inventory. So recently, for the last couple of years, we have realized that there is ML and there are technological improvements wherein we could leverage that technology to bridge those gaps. So now we think we are at that point wherein we could leverage ML significantly to achieve our goals.
Adam, any comments?
Sure. I think, one thing interesting about that quote, it focuses on the 90s as if where we stand today, we've solved all the problems that prevented those businesses from succeeding then. But I think, this is a universal construct that will probably continue to happen. And people with great vision today may have ideas that aren't possible now, but might be more available in 10 to 15 years. So I'd go so far as to say that I agree with this quote and actually think it's kind of prophetic in some ways about how technology works. But as we advance, maybe with such exponential growth, that gap will diminish and will be closer and closer between vision and technology.
I think what Adam said is so perfect, which is exponential growth and bridging the gap. I don't think any one of us in the room can imagine a world where only large companies with deep pockets are going to rule. So the machines are here. Whether they're going to take over the world or not, that's a philosophical debate we can have. But as a business that is not big, let's pick up a fight with Amazon for now, which happens to be our #1 channel, but also happens to be our competition. The question is, what do we do that we are in the race, we are not behind it, we can hopefully then compete, and how would we scale? How would we optimize? How would we reduce wastages? So all those questions for any business around, it's fairly simple. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but if you're not in the race, you will be out of it. So with that in mind, things are only going to get very interesting.
So following that, Vikram, and your comments earlier, how do you, what is it about that perspective that you would like to relate in the work that, for example, you're doing in your area or even from your thought processes as it relates to like marketing and sales and AI and ML?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of scenarios that we are currently working on. For example, when we started this journey 2 years ago, it was always about customer success motion. How once you bought something, how do we drive the value of that product as soon as possible to the customer? And the key concept over there was, how can we understand what you are looking for from our software, and where are the issues, what are the challenges that you are facing, and how do we provide that information using the digital channels or within the product as well. Now we sell, you guys all know Cisco sells so many products and so many softwares, it's just not possible humanly to do all of that. So we had to apply them, we had to use the machine. To start with, we had to go with business rules, but later on we went into AI and all those things. There is, from a technology point of view, I still feel that there is a lot of scope in technology improvement. For example, when we look at AI, AI today is very specialized AI. It can do certain things, but when you look at generic AI, it's still not there yet. And I don't think the technology is even there too. But we cannot just think about technology as a roadblock, but think about what can we do, what exists today, and what is it that we want to drive. So when we started this journey, it was more about, can we know our customers better, like customer segmentation, customer journey, how do they use the product, what are the features that they use, what they want to achieve, what shall we tell them to use them more, and through all digital channels, how we can communicate that information back to the customer, and then see what works, what doesn't work. So these things took a lot of effort, but this is where we are heading towards, and we are working tirelessly to meet these goals.
Very good. You mentioned a very good thing, or you mentioned journey. So Sudhakar, if I may ask you, he gave the perspective from the digital marketing. What's your perspective on this AI ML journey as it relates to like supply planning, supply operations?
So the space where Synaptics is, and it's in a high-tech world, fast-moving products and cell phones and tablets and laptops, and the market that we are on are the Alexas in the world. So our time to market, and we have to make sure that our inventory is optimized, right? At the same time, you don't want to leave any money on the table. So our use case was, hey, if you have to optimize the inventory, then how do we go about? Then we absolutely we wanted to focus on the demand. So though our goal was inventory optimization, so we thought, why not start looking into demand? There's a lot of fluctuation. There's a lot of inputs coming from different parts of the world, and things are changing. As you can see, I think the cell phone, the life of a cell phone is pretty small when compared to some of the other products. So we had to look into areas where we could look into demand, right? How would we try to look into demand, predictive analytics kind of thing. So that's when we thought that why not start looking into ML. And so our journey has been, we thought, let's start looking into if we can have ML predict our forecast for the stable, mature product. So obviously, the goal was to do the inventory optimization. So it's been a great journey. We did get to a point wherein for certain mature products, we do have getting some confidence that maybe we can start leveraging ML to start predicting our forecast. As you mentioned before, so we can focus on the exceptions. So standard products, everything that's matured, maybe ML will drive the demand, and the rest of it we manage by exception. So it's been a great journey so far.
Taking from that, and I may, Adam, if I may ask you to add to what Sudhakar just said, but you did a phenomenal, I mean, your company did a phenomenal work in applying AI and ML, working with us to really come up, I mean, do a change that sounds simple, right, which you presented in great detail yesterday. What are your thoughts that you would like to share with this audience around the AI and ML journey for innovation and breakthrough business benefits, taking that as an example so that they can understand, like for somebody who wants to embark on that journey, what are the things that one should pay attention to?
Sure, and I think AB InBev stands out a little bit from the other companies on this panel because the work that we're doing is not so much software-based. We're a manufacturing company, more or less. We're creating beer. And so you probably wonder, where does machine learning and artificial intelligence play in there? Well, actually, in very many places. And I think we're just scratching the surface. So to go into the specific example where Pluto 7 is working with us, is we found that we could predict a much more accurate filtration process by using artificial intelligence. It's pretty remarkable how you can study certain variables by going through the data and having enough data to do that, and be able to predict with much keener accuracy when you should replace a filter in that fermentation process. So it's a pretty extraordinary thing, and there's so much that goes into making beer, for example, that this is just one example that we're starting with to see how effective AI can be, and we're very optimistic about those results. So I think spawning off from that, any part of maintenance could be predictive maintenance. It could be something in our packaging lines. It could be something with maybe more along what you were suggesting, predicting inventory or customer demand. There's really, the sky's the limit on this. And I think, for all of you out there that are involved in companies or considering this, this really does seem to be the most cutting edge way to make that next huge bump and advancement toward the future.
Thank you. And Deepak, if I may ask you, you are a fast-growing retailer. You have a lot of business growth, and scaling is something that is always at the top of your mind. So with that in mind and related to what Adam and Sudhakar just discussed, what's your perspective?
Yeah, so for us at California Designed In, our focus has also been trying to tie the two ends, which is demand forecasting and supply chain. The whole question of optimization of supply chain, being like a startup again, with limited resources and growth that's surpassing and clearing anything that we had ever forecasted, it became very important for us to ensure that the decisions are near real time, and again, managing by exception. Now, imagine, how many of you really think that a bed sheet, that's what one of the key products we make, needs a retail shelf space on the 7th floor at Macy's? Really, do we really need a huge floor of selling bed sheets? How many of you would go there and be able to actually open one of those bags and feel it? Probably not. So we see products like ours, which are fairly commoditized, completely being online. And therefore, the growth is phenomenal. And we are competing with our channels, whether it's Walmart.com or Amazon.com. So it becomes very important for us to be very nimble, be fast, and in the journey towards, from basically ensuring all our data is in one place, everything is flowing into one place, having a very distributed supply chain running from here to factories in India and China. We have been taking on this journey and seeing, very good results. Of course, those results are still very basic, whether it's inventory reduction or it's, speed in making decisions for changing what is in production line. But how we are looking at ML and then AI is that as we scale up and we face this hyper competition, we would be ready for whether it's demand forecasting, supply chain planning, price optimization, and what have you.
Thank you. So Vikram, coming back to you and marketing, right, on a similar theme, now that you've considered, you looked at, I think you always drove the envelope when it came to technology, because you have to do that in digital marketing. What are the considerations, especially around going on about your AI and ML journey, that you want to point out, right, that would be of interest to this audience?
Is it about strategical or
Tactical.
tactical?
Let's talk about both, yeah. Right.
So one of the things that I would say, we have been using a lot of prediction-based modeling. Earlier, we used to call it as forecasting for like late 90s in Cisco from a supply chain point of view. But this motion of using the data science, not from forecasting, but from prediction point of view is pretty new. And from strategical angle, there are multiple things which comes top of the mind. There is a big hype around AI and ML. A lot of companies today are investing because they feel it's a magic, and it's one silver bullet which will solve all of their problems. But I would just caution, it is not a magic. It's not one silver bullet which will solve your problem. It's a big step forward, and it requires a lot of thought process change in the company itself. Your business objective should be very, very clear. A second thing is the way you use it from a technology and from data point of view. Data science and AI can only work on the data itself. If you don't have the data in a way that could be used for machine, it doesn't mean that you need to have Amazon or Google like exabytes or petabytes kind of data. But you should have enough diversified data that you could use it for machine or algorithm. And the third thing is, as I said, it's not a silver bullet. It requires a lot of work to churn the data in, and there should be a willingness to take that insights from the ML and put them into the process. Sometimes we get a lot of insights, but when we're trying to drive the experience with the customers, like Cisco.com, for example, when we want to say this customer wants to only learn about this, tell them that message, it goes into that channel, oh, we know more, should this be the message, or no, this page cannot be customized, for an example. So sometimes it's in the front end kind of work, it becomes a little difficult. When you have the insight, you know what customer wants, but when you want to show that message to customer, your tools platform doesn't support. So there are a lot of constraints. I will just caution that first from a strategical point of view, that AI is not which can be implemented tomorrow. It takes time, especially in a big company like Cisco. The second thing from tactical point of view is normal activities like what is it, till the time, if your business objectives are clear, till the time you get there, how can you keep on adding the value in the process? Because everybody thinks about AI, they always think about either optimization, whether you say cost or process, or you say, how can I get the innovation or competitive advantage, and how can I use it to extend my business to the next level? But all of these things, when you go to the tactical level, these things will take time, and tactically, you cannot wait for a couple of years to produce the results. So you have to understand what those business challenges are, where the things could immediately add the value. So for example, we were lucky enough that we were part of the sales organization, and there are a lot of companies which has done a lot of things for the sales already, so we had to take those learnings and adjust to our own culture. So for example, customer churn model, customer risk analysis, life cycle advantage, product recommendation, all those things, what is the right contact on this company, what is the timing that you should call that guy, what is that prescriptive insight when you talk to that customer. All of these things came in handy to drive that immediate value that we had to show step by step before we get to that bigger goal. The second thing from a customer success point of view was all about how do we provide the right relevant message to the customer and change that experience. So tactically, it's more around how can you keep on adding the value, but only when your strategical objectives are very clear.
Very good points there. I heard data, keeping focus on data, which we heard even during some of the keynotes. I heard Prashant mention that yesterday, and then also people always, when you talk about AI and ML, it's all about data, and then understanding where you want to go. So Sudhakar, similarly, any insights you want to talk about in the first ML AI, like a proof of concept that you did, that you would like to point out?
I think it has to be tightly integrated with business planning. So it's not just about having data and trying to come up with a magic formula that it's going to predict. Especially for our use case, it was demand plan, come up with an accurate demand plan. So you have to be tightly integrated with business planning as to what are the elements that go into a business plan. One has to work with the given amount of data that is available to put those things along with the algorithms that the ML can come up with. So it's not just throwing in data and then it's going to spit out an end result and that's going to be an accurate forecast. That's not happening. So the business plan, anything that's subjective, objective, or anything that you're getting from the field data, when one is creating the demand plan and the business plan, any element that goes into their thought process, we have to make sure that the ML we could try to incorporate as much as you can only then maybe it starts understanding that there's not one thing that you look into when you enter a demand. So if you're the person that's responsible for next year, maybe, yeah, whatever, how many folks are going to attend this conference? So it could not be one factor or two for you to accurately predict that. Similarly, we had to get into that. It has to be very tightly integrated with the overall business plan. And like he said, it's not something that comes out automatically. So you have to then look into what products can you really apply that, and that's going to be more helpful. So we're still in a very early stage, but we do see some positive results. Of course, some places there are disappointments. So we just have to continue to tweak it and fine-tune it and get to a point. So it's extremely important to put all the elements that are there in a business plan into it.
Okay.
So it's been a great journey as to we had some successes and some, obviously, we still have to learn.
Okay. So, Adam, I heard from Deepak, right, it's not magic, it requires work. Sudhakar mentioned that, hey, there has to be focus and plan behind. In your example, one of the things that I heard, and I want to relate it to your experience, right, that was presented in the keynote today by Rajan Seth, it's all about simple AI. And I think in your case, what we achieved, or what you achieved, was something that at the end became very simple. Right? So any thoughts around that?
Well, one thing I think is interesting about what we're all trying to do here, and I'll use our case with AB InBev as an example, is we're talking so much about machine learning, but what are we really trying to relate to? That's humans. So it's kind of an irony in a way that we're using a machine to better understand ourselves. So, until we enter a world where maybe robots are running everything and then they'd be marketing to themselves, who knows. But for now, it's all about that human aspect. And that actually doesn't just go for consumers. That's also within the organization itself. And that's, a battle that, I've had to fight. And I don't say that as a negative thing. I think it's about educating and getting more and more people aligned, especially a big company like ours. AB InBev has 250,000 employees or some such. So you're not going to have 250,000 people on board with AI from day one, and certainly not key stakeholders who aren't familiar with the technologies yet and haven't had a chance to really understand the value that it can bring. So I think, you say simple AI, but what I would kind of taking a play on those words, I think a real key for us, if we want to lead this AI revolution, is to find a way to simplify the message. How can we show this value to everybody, top, up, and down, that they can see what we can achieve and that it's not a threat. If anything, it's an enhancement.
Thank you. Deepak, any comments?
I think as far as ML and AI is concerned, it's more like a journey, right? So as you said, it's not a magic bullet. And the biggest advantage that we feel at California Design Den, trying to ensure that we set the vision that this is what is going to drive competitive advantage when product differentiation may not be a differentiating factor. This kind of drives us as a company to set everything in place. So it's not that we have to set up some new system that's only going to do ML-based demand forecasting, right? So whether it is basic analytics to advanced analytics or, what have you, it's like a journey, right? So, but once you have a vision that this is where you need to be, and many of those visions are still visionary visions, this does bring in a lot of efficiencies. It kind of becomes a rallying point between the key stakeholders. There's an added advantage where you'll have to relook at all your processes and what have you, because as Adam said, not everyone gets on board right away. So, you kind of internally debate, figure out what do you do, kind of break old molds, make new ones. So we see AI ML not just in what we expect it to produce after a few years, but also as a driving force towards being, on your feet and, just pushing hard and, being in the front.
Thank you, Deepak. So now, between Vikram, you and Sudhakar, you sort of represent the high-tech industry, right? I would like to hear Vikram first to you and then Sudhakar following him. Your thoughts on, now that you have embarked on this AI and ML and started using it, at least getting to understand how to use it in your respective spaces. I think you articulated in some places that, okay, it's a journey. What you see, right, in the high-tech space, where do you see AI being leveraged more? And where do you want to give this audience, okay, here you might be tempted to go into AI, but you may want to go with a little bit of caution, right? Because I think one of the things that what I'm trying to understand is in your experience, and I'm sure that what the audience would like to understand is, as you are going through these journeys, there are learnings like, okay, because AI, everybody wants to get into the AI ML bandwagon, but not every use case may be meant for AI and ML. So any perspective taking that into consideration?
Yeah, so when we talk about AI or ML, there are always risks and benefits to that as well. When we talk about any model or any recommendation, there is always a percentage of accuracy. And one of the things that I was talking earlier was when we look at the MLs today, these are specialized models. Specialized model learning from the data about previous behavior. With this set of behaviors, this was the outcome that got driven. And that drives your prediction about what shall you do tomorrow, because there's the same pattern which will repeat the same thing, assuming that. So when we to put the models in, one thing is we cannot just blindly trust the model. There has to be some way of understanding what those models or outputs are talking about, put the human intelligence around it, and then say, does this cases even make sense or not? So when we were working on a project, customer segmentation, which we are still working on to evolve it to the next level, we realized that we were able to divide our customer in around, for that one particular product, the customer set into like 16 different segments. But when we looked at with the business owners trying to understand what does it really represent, and how shall we drive the experience of each of these segments or each of this set of customers, half of them did not even make sense to them, because it was more around, you know what, this seems pretty much similar to that, their messaging will be a little different, so why don't we merge it together? This one does not even make sense, because these things is like, if everyone is using perfectly, then what will we do with them? So when we look at the machine, these kind of risk, we cannot blindly trust the machine yet. It's a specialized AI, which does a specialized things even better than human in certain aspect. But human supervision in putting that to the motion is still very much required. That intuition of looking, let's say this patterns meant customer will order, but those patterns does not mean much in today's environment. How can we understand from it? How can we apply our human knowledge? And how can we keep it always tuned into the realistic business scenario becomes the most important work in AI. It's not just getting the data, getting meaningful data, driving the insight and putting the insight to work, but it's all about taking that model, making an intelligent decision around it, and then putting it to work, which makes it a recursive cycle. So human interaction is very important, in my opinion, to take this AI to the market. Maybe when the technology evolves in certain time, and when we have general purpose AI, then it's a different story. But for now, it's a specialized AI, and MLs are specialized model based on the data. It should not be taken on the face value. There are certain use cases like vision detection and all those things where AI has already improved beyond human capability. But when we talk about business sense of what makes sense and what does not, I think putting it blind trust in that and taking the action on that without supervision can produce more can produce more risk than advantage as well in certain scenarios.
Okay. Thank you. I think the summary, what you said is any AI solution requires technology and domain and business expertise. And the second thing is there are models that can be leveraged as is, meaning like what they call as the pre-built models, right? Vision API you talked about. But there are certain situations and most of the business situations where you have to have a custom model. Thank you. Sudhakar, any perspective from
We took it a little bit of a simplistic approach, wherein obviously, like Adam mentioned, first thing was ML is going to predict my demand? No way. So can ML really predict what kind of dinner are you going to have? No way. So obviously there was that that kind of a thinking within the company. Then we took much more simplistic approach as to, okay, in all the different product lines or different customers or segments, let's pick something that's where you think there could be a little bit of more predictability within the human thinking. So within your own thinking, there could be certain things that you are more consistent in your thinking. There could be some where you're trying to gather additional data to digest and come up with a solution, so or an answer. So we had to dig through those questions as to, okay, what are the areas where you could be more consistent, a customer could be more consistent, a market could be more consistent. So we can drive our inventory optimization by understanding how the demand is being generated. So we picked up more of those mature products or markets, and then, so obviously the acceptance has to come into picture that, hey, what the machine is predicting is pretty much close to what can I rely on it. So you have to take the use case wherein one starts getting confidence, and so obviously you want to pick up the products on the markets that are a little bit more consistent. Obviously the value is in the unpredictability where it can predict, but you can't start with that. So we took a simplistic approach. Let's take baby steps. So we are at that stage. We came up with the first use case. Now we'll take it to the next level. Can I really apply to the NPI, new product introduction? We don't know. We will. I think that's to be seen.
Thank you. I think the summary there is crawl, walk, and then run. Adam, I think from a AB InBev perspective, you presented a very great vision in your discussion yesterday. I think as a representative of the manufacturing industry, because I look at AB InBev, I mean, as one of the largest breweries, and you can say it's representing the manufacturing industry. What would your takeaway be from that perspective around usage of AI and ML?
Sure, and I do have to say, you keep saying we did this great presentation, but honestly, give yourself some credit. You know, Pluto 7 is the company that really did the machine learning and AI. We just accepted it and put it into our system. So all credit to you guys. But, you know, I'd say this, you have to find use cases that make sense. And I think this is, you know, very in line with what was being said before, is that the fact is AI is not going to be the right solution for a lot of things. I think there will be more and more use cases as technology advances and, you know, foundational layers of technology. So say in our breweries, the more advanced our data collection is, for example, the more opportunities will emerge where we can do things with that data. But it's essential that you really do have the right situations. And I think that's where someone could run after this a little irresponsibly and just get so excited about the AI machine learning idea that say, oh, we can do ML everywhere. And that's really not true. I mean, if you were going to go swimming in a children's pool, you wouldn't say, let's go buy scuba gear, you know, to do that. You know, there's certain things, you have to find the right setting. And I think that's a combination of, in our case, working together with experts who really do know the right situation. In the case of Pluto 7 with us, you know, we actually held a hackathon where we explored a number of areas where we thought AI could be valuable. And we looked to them to come up with a model that worked. And from those different options, it became apparent that we had found something here. So I think, you know, to pursue something in this space for all of you, I would just make sure that it's a prudent decision. Definitely, I'm not trying to stop anybody's excitement. Be as passionate as possible, but, you know, save yourself the trouble of overdoing it for the wrong situations.
Thank you, Adam. And then before we open it up to the audience, Deepak, final thoughts from you as a representative of the retail industry, and a high growth one at that.
I wouldn't go as far as representing retail. That Mr. Bezos would be better off. But, you know, I'm thinking like ML AI is like a little baby, right? So you start putting in data, you still have to, kind of feed and change the diapers, and that's where we are right now. We are hoping that in few years, this baby is going to grow up and she's going to run and she's going to do pole vault, which I never did. And, she's going to win Olympic medals, which I couldn't even dream of. So this is pretty much how we are looking at ML and AI, right? So it's with us. We have to pick, with this, we are driven to ensure that we think future, we set up systems, data flow, rethink processes, and then, like, for example, the planning in a box that we did with the Pluto 7, we were able to see some good results as far as demand forecast and supply chain optimizing is concerned. So we press a button, we see what's going on, we quickly change what's in the supply chain. I mean, it's still basic. There's a speed now. So 500, 1,000, 2,000 SKUs that we have to manage, we are able to do it quick and really fast. Now, when will this baby grow up and just take all charge? Well, we'll see when.
Thank you, Deepak. I think with that, I'd like to open this up to the audience. We have about 5 minutes left.
It's more for you, I guess. We didn't use any package.
Okay, I think I will leave it. I'll leave it to Deepak. Yes, Deepak. The question is there any packaged application out there that can help jumpstart their business? That's
Well, it'll sound like a sponsored ad, but we used planning in a box that Pluto 7 has, which uses, of course, Google Cloud and ML and AI things within the Google ecosystem. That did help us a lot as far as our inventory controls are concerned. So with, very fast demand, very decent demand forecasting, and a quick connection to supply chain, we were able to, see very visible inventory reductions. So. Can you repeat your question, please? No. Right. I think more with the fast movers. Because again, we as a company, our slow movers are really slow. So, one of the disadvantages, as we were talking earlier, you need to have data to run some of these models and see real results. So our slow movers are really slow movers. So, we didn't expect actually some of the results to be benefiting the slow-moving SKUs and what have you. So we kept our safety stock levels in that case and worried more about, what was really selling and where we had growth. Sure.
Any other question? Okay, if not, I think that's pretty much it. Feel free to drop by our booth at Pluto 7. I have put it up there. We can show you more demos on what's possible with AI and ML. Thank you very much.